I try to time block when, if I'm working on a customer's vehicle, I want 100% of my attention there. I take a break for lunch, I'll get back to people, answer phone calls, try to eat, maybe I'll research a job I'm working on, and just try to, whatever I'm doing, I want to be 100% focused on that thing.
Welcome to Boys Under the Hood. Pat Kelly, joined by James Stevenson, owner of Lotus Business Solutions, and our special guest here today, Tim Lanza from Lanza Auto in Leominster, Mass. What's going on, brother?
Not too much, man. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. It wasn't a short drive, I know that.
No, it was a little bit of a hike this morning, but it was scenic. It's a nice drive out here.
Boys Under the Hood is brought to you by Lotus Business Solutions.
Yeah, Lotus Business Solutions is a company that we started to help auto repair shop owners that are struggling a little bit, right? They're working crazy hours. They don't find that they're profitable. They can't hire. They feel very overworked. And so if that describes what you're feeling, and you don't think that you're getting progress, and you don't think that you're really getting anywhere, you want to give us a call, and we can sit down for an introductory call and kind of learn a little bit more about your business and how we can help you. That's actually how we met Tim. Tim's been a client of ours since the summer.
You can learn more about Lotus Business Solutions by logging on to lotuspe.us.
Yeah.
Boys Under the Hood also brought to you by Lotus Media. We specialize in getting the word out for you. It's just that simple, with a unique, concise message that separates you from other people within your business sector, whether it's broadcast media, whether it's social media, whether it's digital media as well. Lotus Media is lotusmedia.biz. It's easy to find us. We'd be happy to help you. Also, Boys Under the Hood sponsored by Lotus Financial.
Lotus Financial, we started that, so we have some CPAs that work with us, one being Nicole, my wife, who's probably the most brilliant person I've ever met, and the hardest working. And so Nicole and some other CPAs that work for us, they handle all the books and accounting for all of our portfolio companies, so all the companies that we own and a lot of the companies that we work with. And so basically what they do is they take the stress and strain out of all of the financials. And people are so fearful of their financials, and they're so worried about tax time. If you have a good accountant, you shouldn't be worried about that stuff, and so if you find that you are struggling to maintain cash flow, if you're struggling on bills, if you're at the end of the year, you're always getting beat up on taxes and you just have no idea where you stand financially, you want to give Lotus Financial a call, and Nicole and Jenna will be able to definitely help you.
And this is something else we touched on. If you find yourself doing your books at the end of working all day, and maybe that's a good jumping off point. As a business owner, were you ever in a spot where not only are you working all day, but then you've got to go home and do all the admin stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously putting in a lot of hours. The shop's just my dad and I, and over time, he was quick to hand off the things he didn't like, so the books were first on the list for me to start doing. And a lot of times that's like a Saturday or a Sunday project for me, and I'm trying to catch up everything from the week and stay on top of it, but it's very difficult to balance everything.
And then the next thing you know, the week starts again. So your weekends go on from doing the financials. Now you're back to work on Monday early, like, shit, I've not even finished my financial stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So some help there from Lotus Financial, definitely.
Absolutely. And so, Tim, you are you're early on in your business life, and so I just want to kind of talk today and learn a little bit more, help the audience learn a little bit more about you, kind of how you got to where you are, and maybe some future goals, and so you are a client of ours. You're doing really, really well, and not everybody knows that. Not everybody knows your story. So how'd you get started? Tell me about it.
So I have kind of probably a unique situation, as we've talked about, compared to some of the other shops you've worked with. My dad has been in business this year 50 years. He's always pretty much worked for himself. He is technically like a technical genius. He's one of the smartest people technically I've ever met. And he always wanted me to stay out of the car business. He never wanted me in the repair business, wanted me to go to college, get an education, which I did, got a corporate job, like my parents wanted, and found myself after a few years very, very unhappy, very depressed, just was not a fit for me at all.
How so? Like what without getting too crazy about it, what happened? Like what didn't you like about it that you do like working for yourself?
Well, now in retrospect, I didn't really realize this at the time, but I am someone who needs to constantly be progressing and growing and learning and doing new things and kind of trying to get to that next level. And I had gotten to this office job and it seemed like, okay, this is just what you're going to do for 40 years and then you retire. And that just, yeah.
So they just kind of compartmentalized you like that. Like, here's what you're going to do. And maybe after 5 years, maybe we'll give you a raise and maybe move you up the chain a little bit. But otherwise, you're just kind of going through a day-to-day like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if to get a little bit more specific, it was like a recruiting staffing type position. And I felt personally like, I don't mind sales or selling, I guess, but I want there to be value and I want to believe in what I'm selling. And so it's like you come in the morning, they hand you a job description for a company that you've never been to, a job you barely know anything about. And now it's like, go convince some guy to take this job. And by the way, try to get them down as low as you can so that you can get a little bit of money out of it.
That's gotta be tough to put your stamp of approval on that. You don't know the business, you don't know the guy, you're trying to hire him for this position that you know nothing about. So where's the satisfaction in that job at the end of the day?
Yeah, and I just didn't feel necessarily a lot of the time like I was providing value for someone. I was more of like a pain to them, or you're trying to bother someone who's maybe not even looking, and it wasn't a good match for me.
Well, this is a good spot to address this as well, because you were similar in that area where you had to take that leap that one day where you're like, shit, I gotta do my own thing here because this just ain't working.
Man, I had worked for the final straw for me is that I worked at a local dealership. I had worked for a family, like a cousin's shop, and I learned a lot from them. They were, they're incredible. It's a very small shop, but I worked for a family shop. And I got all my certifications and everything, really got a good education on the job with them. And then I worked for a dealership, and I remember one day I was getting ready to buy a house, and I was like a couple weeks away from closing on this house. And so my work ethic is like insane. I'll work all day, every day. It's not a problem. I've always been that way. I'm just obsessed with work. And so that business had like a 3-day on or a 4-day on, 3-day off schedule all the time. It would kind of like, it would be, 12-hour shifts, so I think it was like 3 days on, 4 days off. And so I would go in there and work 6 days, even if they were closing the 7th day in the shop, I'd go in there and I was really, working a lot of hours, producing a lot of work, really top quality work. I have all these certifications and they were paying me like pennies, absolute pennies. And so one day I finally went to them. I said, "Hey, look, I'm trying to buy a house. I need to progress a little bit, right? Like I've been here. I was there for a little while, and I just felt that I had earned a little bit more money." So when I went to them, I explained my case, and hey, no problem. We'll talk to you about it. And so a couple weeks later, weeks go by. And so as an employer, we realize now, like, you can't let weeks go by and let something sit in an employee's head. Like, you have to address these things relatively quickly as you can, not emotionally. And so a couple weeks go by and I ask again. Now I'm getting ready to close on the house, and I know that I need just a little bit more money to make me feel a little bit more safe and sound. And so I went to them again. Hey, what can we do? And so so another couple days go by. They call me into the office, and you got all the head people of this dealership, and they said, "Yeah, sit down. Let's talk about it. And so conversation was maybe 30 seconds. They said, "Yeah, so we all went through it, and your performance is stellar, and you're doing this and that, and you 135% efficiency. Man, you do a wonderful job. So we came up with something we feel is very generous." And I'm like, "All right, shit, all right,
here we go.
Yeah, let the money roll in, right? Like, reap the rewards of all of my hard work." And they said, "Well, we've decided to give you 10. And I'm like, "Oh shit, they give me $10 more an hour? All right,
Yeah.
all right." And I was like, so I said, "Dollars?" And they said, "Oh, no, James, no, cents." I'm like, "You're gonna give me 10 cents more an hour? Are you serious?" And the guy just kind of like looked at me. "Yeah, like you're looking around the week, bro, this is a great offer." "All right, man, thank you so much." I said, "Let me think it over." I went out to the shop. I just wheeled my toolbox over to my truck, shoved the freaking tools in there, and then I opened my own shop. I had already kind of started my own thing at that point, but that was it. Like, I thought that was like the most disrespectful, 10 cents, my God.
How insulting is that? I mean,
Yeah.
so it's not everyone who would walk away from an extra $5 a week before taxes, though. I'm just saying.
Not everybody.
I mean, So do you look back on that and think that might have been a mistake on this day?
No, I don't. You know, it's not been easy, but much like Tim, Tim, you're starting out in this business on your own now, and so it's you and your dad, and you guys have this small shop that has an incredible name, an incredible reputation. Your dad is such a great guy, but he wants you to go into a different industry, and you really, really like this. But your goal isn't to necessarily be a technician. You want to do something a little bit different. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, sure. So I actually, my official education, I guess, is in business management, and I probably should have paid more attention when I was in school, but I'm more of a, like, I need to apply it right to something. So I've spent the last 5 years relearning a lot of what I probably should have been paying attention to more in class.
Yeah.
And I just see myself more as a business owner than a technician. And that's just simply because I look at, I think a technician looks at a car and it's a machine and something's broken and it's like, how can I fix it? Well, I look at the business as a machine, and it's a machine that exchanges value for money. And that machine is going to work at different levels of efficiency. And it's interesting to me to try to make that machine work as good as it can. So providing more value for the customer, avoiding headaches during your day, and trying to put all those pieces in place to have everything working smoothly.
Yeah.
That's just more the way my brain works or looks at it. So I'm trying to grow myself into that area where I can put the pieces in place around me, and do what I enjoy the most.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, what do you find as the most challenging thing starting out now, right? Because you're very early in your business career. Right? You're very early in your business ownership career, and you're very new to coaching. We're only a few months in, and you've seen some increase, but you also see a lot more work too in the very early stages. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, probably, and this is before I was working with you, a lot more so, and even so now, the most difficult thing probably is like mindset. And when you're working, by yourself or with one other person, it can be very difficult mentally when things go wrong or when you're not getting the result you want. And, I'm someone who's like very, very hard on myself. I expect very high performance out of myself. And if I don't get it or I can't figure out why I'm not getting it, start to get a bit down on myself. So that's one thing that is, I think, challenging on a daily basis. But like, as you know, it's a challenging industry overall. We work on all different makes and models. So you could see, maybe I'll have a Land Rover in, I did, a Mercedes, a Honda, and all these systems are similar, but they also work a little bit different. So there's a lot of time that goes into trying to educate yourself, making sure you're understanding like the theory of operation of a particular system. Because if you don't understand that, how can you fix the problem? Mm-hmm. So those are a couple of things that, I've had difficulty with, or I've found challenging here and there on a daily basis. But I mean, the whole thing is honestly challenging on a day. It's like, pick your day and I'll tell you what the challenge of the day is.
So when you're going day to day and kind of doing the same thing with your pop, how easy is it to kind of fall into habits that might or might not be good?
I would say that, bad habits are extremely easy to fall into. And this is definitely something that James and I have been working on. Is my dad has always worked for himself, right? He's never had any employees, and until I came along, which is more of like a partner than an employee. So he is extremely hardworking. Honestly, probably the hardest working person I've ever met in my life. And the issue comes is when you're a hardworking person, you come up with a hardworking way to do something. But then now when you have to look at having someone else come in who probably knows a lot less than you have to start thinking of what's the easiest way to do this, or how can I make this person's life easier?
Right.
So when you start to think about it from that perspective, all of a sudden you start making your own life easier. It's like maybe you picked a harder solution because you could do it that way, but then when you have to think, well, what is somebody who's only got 2 years of experience, how are they going to be able to do this? Then you start to change that process, and then it's just a constant, it's just like any other habit building, right? Working out or eating healthy, it's like you just got to do a little bit every day. Sometimes you fall off course, but you need to get back. You need to know what your set point is, know what your process is, and know why you do it that way.
It's the hardest part about being good at what you do. Stepping back sometimes and kind of trying to look at it as if it's almost a TV show, right? You gotta almost look at it through different eyes to see what's working and what's not. I struggle with this every single day because it's very easy for me to come in and at 2 o'clock do the same thing that I did yesterday. So I go back and I listen to my air checks. I listen to my breaks between the songs, like in the commercials kind of thing. And you really have to be your own critic. Otherwise, you stay stuck in that spot sometimes. Has it been difficult for you to kind of adjust in the way that you do business to make it more efficient?
Obviously, any sort of change can be difficult at times and growing pains. James has helped quite a bit with that, and one thing we've worked on a lot and continue to is writing out the processes. Your processes and procedures are what make your business, right? Lanza Auto or Precision Auto, what's the difference between those two? Obviously location, but it's our way of doing business. So it's a unique experience based on the way you do things. And then when you start to write those out on paper, you start to look at like, well, I'm doing this process to get this end result, but there's like 6 extra steps in here that I could actually cut out. And then all of a sudden you start to find these efficiencies in your business and make things work more smoothly.
A lot of trial and error, of trial and error, but it's about determining what the error is, right? Like setting data, right? What's your minimum level of acceptable performance, or what is the worst result that you're looking for and when you want to make a change, And so as long as you set that criteria early and you make decisions somewhat quickly, but not irrationally, and you do such a good job at using the data that's in front of you, right? Whether that be facts or numbers, which numbers are facts too, and all of that stuff to help you make a lot of very educated decisions. You're you'll do really, really well because you are so analytical, like you just really look at all of those numbers, everything that you have at your disposal, and you make these very educated decisions around what you're doing. And, you don't waste a lot of time, where some people in some shops that we work with, they will just overanalyze everything, and they'll sit there and they'll analyze and they'll never actually take action. Where you analyze and you're like, all right, based on what I know, I'm going to move forward with this. And sometimes you move forward and you're like, all right, that sucked. That result sucked, but you kept doing something and you learned something from that experience. And that's one of the things that I really admire about you. Even in this, 4 months, 5 months or something that we've been working together, that's one of the things I really admire about you, because that is a tough thing to teach a client or a new business owner too. Like, hey, try things, break shit, see what happens, move forward, right? It's not the end of the world as long as we're taking care of the customer. If something goes wrong with the customer, then, hey, let's just explain to them, what happened, be honest with them. And rational customers are very rarely upset as long as we fix something. They judge us based on how we handle our failures, not just how we handle our successes. And I just really admire how quickly you took to that portion of it.
Well, they say the worst decision is indecision.
Yeah.
So it's like if you want to go to the gym, to use that analogy again, you're trying to decide what you're going to do for your workout. You spend 45 minutes trying to decide, and then you just don't go. If you just went and got on the treadmill, and started walking, you'd say, all right, I feel like doing this today. You're already there. Like the process has been started, so it's a lot easier to just go to the next step.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it.
We're speaking with Tim Lanza from Lanza Auto in Leominster, Massachusetts. You said your father's been in the business for 50 years. How was he? Obviously he must have had processes embedded into his head through the decades that he's been doing business. How did he approach adjusting the processes to make them more efficient?
Well, so, he has a lot of his ways of doing things, and a lot of that he's tried to teach me throughout the years. And, typical father-son relationship, I want to do things my way. He's got 50 or 75, 75 years of reasons for thinking he wants to do it his way.
Legit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or 70, sorry, not 75. But he tried to instill a lot of that stuff as far as like doing things the right way with me, and a lot of times I'll listen, learn from him, and it's been incredibly helpful. And then other times I'm like, no, I'll do it my way. And then sure enough, my way goes wrong. And I think, okay, maybe this is why he told me 5 times that I should do, it in this order.
Right.
So I think over the years, we've had a lot of ups and downs. It's a stressful work environment in general. You add family, father, son, it's even more so. But I think I've seen a lot of his processes and why they have value and why they're important. And he's starting to see some of mine and making life a little bit easier on a daily basis. And so we're kind of coming together on that, little by little.
So I want you to talk about the first time that you spoke with James. I mean, it was probably way different than the first time I spoke with him, which we did escape the law that night, didn't we?
Was that the day with the markers? When Maddie, we had lunch and then with the markers and the graffiti and all that stuff.
Somebody had a great idea of using penises on people's cars. It might have been me, I don't know. So when you first contacted James, how did that conversation go? I mean, and why did you first reach out to him?
So I think that James actually kind of had reached out to me first. So I'm in a couple of different Facebook groups that are like auto repair shop owners and stuff. And I really value education. And one of my goals that I had set myself up for this year was to either join some sort of a mastermind group or get a coach and really try to take myself to the next level, personally and as a business owner. And I think I had asked a question in one of those groups, and James had either commented on it or messaged me and said, hey, look, I know a thing or two. If you want to have a conversation, maybe there's some advice I can give you or help. And then we set up a call, and he and I got on the phone. And I mean, maybe James could tell you a little bit more about like his perspective from our first conversation.
So what was your view when you first eyeballed Tim's business? Were there any flags that immediately went off for you that this could be improved? I can help this guy?
I didn't think that there were a lot of red flags. Tim has a company that is a little bit smaller than we would normally work with, but Tim is exceptionally smart. He's just really, really, really smart. And so a lot of things that he would say, in that initial call, it just almost sounded like something that I would say. It really mimicked my thought process. So, I kind of had a feeling that I wanted to have additional conversations with him. And, so we had a couple conversations. And from there, I decided that a lot of our goals aligned. He's in our network. He's, an hour from us. And, I just felt that I could genuinely help him and, in his company. So once we began working together, a lot of the things that I had thought quickly became true. Like, he is really smart. He can pick up on a lot of these things. A lot of these things that you want to try to teach these shop owners that were at one point technicians, you have to break them a lot of these these habits. You have to get them out of the mindset of being a technician and get them to work more on the business. Where Tim is a phenomenal technician, that's not what he wants to do, and he does an incredible job, but that he wants to run a business, and he wants to train people, and he wants to grow his staff and do a lot of the things that we're really incredible at helping shop owners do. And so for me, all of his goals and who he is as a person and his attitude and his aptitude and his ethics, they all align with ours. And it just made a lot of sense to begin to kind of form this team and help him out and just learn a lot more about him and create this plan that ultimately will eventually lower his stress level. But at the beginning, all of a sudden you have some new person saying, all right, well, now we've got to do these things.
Right.
And you didn't get it done, and so there's this accountability as well as the plan. A coach helps you skip a lot of steps. I think somebody once said, and I heard it from somewhere else, so I'll steal it. They give you a coach helps you get the growth without the scars. I think Moses said that or something, right? And so you get the growth without the scars. And so, we give him a lot of information that we've used, and it's tried, it's tested, it's true, and then he puts his own spin on it. He puts his own style to it. A perfect procedure that works for me and how I'm going to road test a car doesn't necessarily work for him. And so we talk through these things, and not every procedure that may work for me is going to work for him. Again, it's about a lot of conversations. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that, right? We have certain periods in our meetings, and so a general client meeting, we have one for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then we have a second call every week, about 20 minutes, just to check in. Hey, we talked about these things on, Monday is our call. We talked about these things. How'd you do it? Well, I didn't get to it. All right, well, why? This came up, that came up, the other came up. I have questions about this. I'm unsure how to execute on this. I'm putting this together, but I want to make sure I'm in the right direction. So you get a lot of information out of a coach, not just helping you build systems, but also helping you through your thought process. And the other thing that a good coach does is they help you with that mindset, right? Because we are, as humans, we are horrible to ourselves. We are horrible to ourselves. The things we say to ourselves in our own internal monologue are things that we would never say to another person out loud in our lives. And so sometimes it gets very challenging when you're taking on all of these new things. And if you're anything like me, which you're very, very similar to me, and we've talked about that, is when you're not making leaps and bounds every day, right? You're filling this bucket up. And the bucket is 3/4 of the way full. Don't stop, don't shut the water off, keep filling it up, and eventually you're going to get those results. So a good coach keeps a client engaged, right? You keep them engaged. And so sometimes when we find that somebody is still struggling mentally somehow, we have Stella. And so Stella's incredible. Stella is like a little mind ninja. And so she works with clients and then some of the shop owners that we have. And Stella will get on the phone with somebody and she'll kind of call you on your shit, really kind of push you around in a very positive way and just make you stop feeling sorry for yourself. If it's kind of our tier, right? If I can't get you happy, then maybe Stella can, and it works really, really well. And Tim, I can't say enough good about you and your ability to think through a lot of these problems, just your thought process in general. And ultimately, that's why we chose to work with you.
Something that it's funny. I remember back specifically from that first conversation, and I was listening to one of you guys' episodes on the way here, and I heard you mention it, and we had this conversation before you guys had even started this back up. But when I have a problem, I try to make a habit of looking at it and saying, "How is this my fault?" In a positive way, right? Where do I, as you I think specifically said, where do I intersect with this problem and what could I have done differently? Because I'm the only one I can really change. So say a vendor sends you a part and it's the wrong part. Well, you got to check the part number before. Why is the car part on the rack when you didn't even have the part in? So it's then you start to think, going back to those systems and processes, how could I change this so that I don't have a situation where I've got a car part on my lip, the wrong part in my hand, and now I'm unhappy, the customer's unhappy, and the vendor's unhappy.
And those are all things that you want to put in your notebooks too, and so sometimes you can't solve these problems as they're happening. Something comes up, it delays you. Something comes up, it annoys you. Something comes up and you're like, oh, I think we could do this a little bit more efficiently, even though we got through it. We put that down in our notebooks, and so at the end of the day, then we begin to go back and refine systems to make sure that we get a consistently high quality result. And that's something that you really excel at as well, is beginning to document things and constantly going in and adjusting your handbook to make sure the experience is better. So the reason that I know that you're doing that is because, one, we talk about all the time, but two, you're getting to this position where you are creating these systems so that you can hire. And you can begin to duplicate your result very easily without just throwing somebody into the shop. And so, as you're beginning to hire, what struggles are you having with that? That's a real hot button issue for everybody right now is hiring. When you get this volume of applicants, how are you doing with that?
I've probably had my ad out for maybe 2 or 3 weeks now, maybe a little bit longer, I'm not sure, and I've talked to probably a dozen people, had half a dozen in for interviews, and it's challenging to, luckily, I worked in recruiting, so I do have a feel for that whole part of the process. Yeah. But you got guys come in that obviously think the world of themselves and they can do this and they can do that, and it sitting at a desk with someone, it's not always the easiest to tell, are they what they say they are. So, and not only that, but the industry's changed a lot. You know, when my dad, or even like when you were working as a tech, you know, working for this company, you weren't hardly making any money. Now,
I think I was a master tech. When I finally went fully on my own, I was a master tech and I was making like $18.50 an hour. And I was producing somewhere around maybe like anywhere consistently between 85 and 100 and change a week of hours. And I had to produce that amount of hours because, you know, like I was making fucking pennies, you know? And so now there's no way you can get a master tech for that amount of money, you know, and that's a big problem that we see with a lot of shops now is like, you know, they're scared or they don't have the ability to pay a technician what they need. And they say, oh, well, I can't, we took on a new company a week ago, signed every, you know, we had another new company, you know, we add we just add them regularly. And so this company that we added, one of the first conversations that we had with them was that, hey, you need to start hiring, and here's how we do it, right? So as we got to talking, they're like, well, you know, we're not going to increase our labor rate. You know, we're priced competitively in our market, but they add all kinds of extra value. Well, it doesn't matter what other people are charging in your area. Like that's an insane way to price your service. You have to actually perform a mathematical calculation to determine what your expenses are, and then that will tell you what you need to charge for labor to stay profitable. And so here, all these people, you know, these different business owners, and then, you know, even this new company that we just recently took on, said, well, we can't, you know, we can't charge more. Nobody will pay it. And I can tell you that 100 out of 100 times, when somebody begins to charge what they need to stay profitable, they really do a lot better. And there's a few reasons why, right? We're not looking to just gouge the customer, but we need to pay for the training and the tools and the people and all of these things that we need to stay successful. And so when the business is profitable, it makes it a lot easier to allocate money for better equipment and for better training and all of these things that we can reinvest back into the company. It's not so the owner can go buy a big boat or something like that, you know, it's so that we can invest in our people. And for many years, I was always told, if you throw peanuts, you get monkeys. And that really resonates with me because the same man told me, I remember I was really struggling to hire technicians. I was really, really struggling many years ago to hire techs. And I see this guy, and I had flown out to this seminar, and it was a disastrous trip, honestly, God. It was the worst trip. Like, I got delayed at Bradley in Hartford. Hilarious. I get delayed at Bradley, and so it's like a 2-hour delay. So they finally pull us off the plane, and they're like, all right, the flight's canceled. Go back down and get your luggage. Okay. So we're all down at the carousel waiting to get our luggage. Then they get on the thing. They're like, everybody back to the plane. You know, this flight, get on the plane now. We're like, I thought our luggage is coming out. You get on the plane takes off. It was terrible. I had to sleep in the airport. It was awful. But I needed to get to this class. And I remember I got there, and one of the things I wanted to do was just talk to this one guy. And we're talking. The first thing he says to me was, James, how's it going with your hiring? You know, have you been able to hire people? I said, man, I'm really struggling, but we're trying a lot of new things, and you know, we'll see how it goes. And he goes, isn't that great? And I'm like, what the fuck is this old guy talking about? You know, is this great? Like, this is a problem. I need to hire more people. You know, like, how do we scale up? Like, these are all the things I'm thinking. And, you know, he sees this question in my head, you know, something with my eyes or something with my body language. And he said, the shops that know how to recruit, hire, train, and retain people are going to be the only shops left standing. And so if you haven't figured it out now, you're on your way to figure it out. And when you do, you know, and so as you look around, like, how many shops are closing everywhere? And every shop that you talk to has a problem with a lack of technicians. You know, and so there's a lot that goes into that, right? And then the second biggest problem that people have is car count, right? Those are the two reasons that people normally call me. Hey, I need cars, right? Or I need techs. And then when they go to hire techs, they say, well, I need more cars so that I can pay for the techs, right? I can't pay this guy $45 an hour, $50 an hour, right? Because that's what a really good tech is going for, right? Anywhere between like $35 and $45 an hour now. How the hell do you pay this guy that can come in and do a phenomenal job and do it consistently if you're charging $89 an hour, right? Like, you're going to have $89 an hour customers that are always coming in for the cheapest, lowest dollar shit, and you're going to be in a race to the bottom. You have to charge based on the amenities and the people that you have, determine what kind of product you want to put out, figure out how much it's going to cost to do that, and then go and market to that audience.
But that's a tough pickle to be in, right? I mean, which I would totally understand. I can't get more cars because I can't hire the right people, and I can't pay the right people because I don't have enough cars. So how does that go? How does that struggle go? Like, what do you prioritize? The quality, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. So I've been there. I started as a one-man shop, and I had staff, I lost staff. I've always, you fight this battle, but every time you get a little bit better, and so then I also have the ability to, or I guess I'm fortunate enough to have been able to work with a lot of businesses that have gone from where I was and where Tim is, and or even where Tim was, and get past it. And so the recipe that I found that works best is when you start building your brand, right? Brand building is like evergreen content. It works very, very well, right? How do we get customers? Right? How do we get customers? They walk in the door, they just show up. Right? And so if you have a location that's very Main Street, they just show up. They randomly find us online, right? And how do they find us, right? Based on our rank, right? And if you don't have good SEO, which is something you have to do all the time, right? Then you have to get paid ads to kind of to bridge that gap and show up a little bit higher in search, and do all these different things that'll make your site more relevant to eventually get you up. You get them through referrals. That's a cheap and easy way to do it, especially if you have great customers. You could do it through specials, you can do it through partnering with different places, you can do it with fleets, there's all these different ways that we can get customers. But the one thing that's consistent is that people want to do business with people, right? They don't want to do business with Lanza Auto, they want to do business with Tim and Steve Lanza. That's who they want to do business with. They don't want to do business with Lotus Media, they want to do business with Pat Kelly. Right? That's who they want to do business with. And so when we understand that, we have to do things that help separate us from all of the noise out there. And even more so than ever, there's so much noise out there. And so you have to put out even more content. Well, we used to be able to post on social media once a week, twice a week. You have to put something out there almost every day, because marketing is consistency over time. And so if we're constantly working on explaining how we help a customer, how we solve a problem, and peppering in really, really strong offers that customers will want to interact with, it seems to work much better than the guy that advertises once in a while, right? Like an okay marketing plan executed regularly all the time will kick the crap out of an incredible marketing plan that is only executed every once in a while as people need customers. And that's something else that people kind of always say, well, we're real busy, and then all of a sudden we slowed down. Well, what were you doing for advertising when you were busy? Nothing, because we had work. There you go. There you go. Marketing is something you have to do all the time. The other thing is you have to recruit all the time. You have to look for staff all the time, every single day, all the time, just like you're looking for customers. You're collecting people. You're looking for better vendors. You're looking for better customers. You're looking for better staff, and you're finding ways all the time to make the experience for all three of them better all the time, and especially for you, because eventually you want to kind of get to where I am and begin to purchase shops and partner with a lot of other shops, and these are like some longer term goals. You gotta have a Rolodex, so to speak, of people, right? Nobody even uses that word anymore. Right?
And I want to back up for a second to your point on marketing. I've turned people away who come to me and they say, I want to advertise on the radio for a week. And I'm like, well, then you just might as well just write me the check. Or they'll say something like, I've got $100 a month to spend on advertising. Yeah, we can't be consistent with that kind of money. It's got to be consistent. Even when you're doing well, it can't be like, oh, the advertising worked, I'm done now. Right? You can't only advertise when your business is down. It'll bring it back up, but you're going to be doing one of these if you don't keep it on. And Precision has stayed on forever. And Precision's killing it. Matt's killing it over there. Does he need the money today? Maybe not. But for the broader picture of the success of the business, absolutely he does.
Yeah. This, I don't know, I think, again, it's always consistency over time. The customer doesn't necessarily need you to, freaking heater is.
Yeah, speaking of noise. Jesus Christ. But every time Tim talks, it stops.
Every time.
Yeah, have to talk more.
Get on that mic and say something real quick. It's cold out. I don't know. It's really
Keep it in one shot, man.
So, I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. Was it pizza? Is that what we're talking about?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm getting hungry.
I think, with precision, one of the things that we realized very early on was that, like, I test a lot of different things that we're going to try to do with other companies on precision because, it's mine. If I break it, then, I'm sorry, I'll just fix it. And one of the things that we realized is that, we were that stereotypical company that would advertise like crazy when we were slow, or when we needed people, or any of that, and then, as it would pick up, we would stop. We would just stop. I'd be like, well, I don't need the expense. And then one day I stopped looking at advertising as an expense, and it just became like a fixed part of our budget. Hey, look, this percentage is always gonna go out, and we're gonna do, instead of doing a ton of stuff now, we're just gonna do a normal amount. And we're just, we're gonna do kind of the same thing all across the board. We'll allocate a certain amount of money to paid ads, a certain amount to social media, a certain amount to radio. Some people say radio is no good. That's not true at all. Radio is an incredible form of brand building, right? An incredible form of brand building. And, you find a station that is good for you. Pat is obviously a master at that. Pat is very, very good at building campaigns for radio.
So you're thinking, when you were talking about doing something consistent, that's exactly what the best investors in the world do.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they do. They don't pull out when the market goes down, they keep on.
You stay in.
You stay in.
Yeah.
You stay in. You don't drop out when it's bad, right?
I remember I had freaking Tesla stock. I had this Tesla stock, and I'm listening to all the brilliant people online that are like, Tesla, that company's going out of business. They're struggling to raise capital. There's all these problems, and I had a significant position in Tesla, right? So I don't know. I'm losing a little bit of money. These people all online must know something. They're all so smart. They go on there talking all this shit, and so I sold my Tesla position for a loss. And it was a monster position. And then 6 months later, it spiked up, it split, it since split twice, and if I would have just stayed in it and just stayed the course, I wouldn't have taken a loss. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have taken a loss.
You gotta put that behind you though. That's happened to me too. And for the longest time, I was like, what a stupid fuck I am.
Yeah.
Right? I'm suddenly going to be a financial planner and start making my own decisions on when I should and shouldn't buy stock, right?
Yeah.
That's happened to me as well. Same thing with my company, Socket Communications. I sold a bunch of theirs because I thought this is not going to work. And sure as shit, 2 days later, it was up 20% and then it split.
Yeah.
So now I'm the stay the course guy. When things are down, the money doesn't change going in.
Yeah.
The money's consistent going in.
I think that's the thing, right? That's the trick to business, is not getting too rattled, right? Stay consistent. It's okay. You are gonna make mistakes. You are gonna trip and fall. You're gonna skin your knee. Just get up and brush the dirt off, and then figure out what happened. And so me, I talk about these notebooks, right? I got all these damn notebooks behind me. I got one of these for every company that I'm working with, right? I got all these different notebooks, and so and isn't it crazy all the notebooks that I have?
I gotta be honest, it's almost unusual.
It's insanely unusual, but that's the way I do it. And people are like, why don't you punch that stuff into your phone? Fuck that. I don't like putting stuff into the phone. If I could go back to a flip phone, I was actually talking about this with somebody the other day. If I could go back to a flip phone, I would get a flip phone. Did they even make them? If they do, I'll go get one today.
Yeah, my dad has one.
A flip phone still?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would love a flip phone.
Those are the best. Talk about a great excuse to not text people. Be like, I got a flip phone, and it'll take me a year to write the word "the."
I would go back to the T9 though. I love the T9 text.
Yeah.
But then you got no emojis, and there's no
But it fits in your pocket. It's not a billboard.
It fits right in your pocket. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just about limiting distraction.
Yeah, it's
right?
noise. There's so much noise, whether it's email, social media, people texting you, people calling you, all this stuff, and you're trying to focus during your day, and it's overwhelming. or they just like throw that on do not disturb. And
So what do you do? How do you do it? How do you quiet the noise during the day? Because you're a busy guy, you're a busy shop, you're kind of wearing a lot of hats, and you're trying to hire, and you're trying to build systems. You're putting all this new stuff together. How do you quiet the noise?
I try to time block. I try to be good about, first of all, like verbalizing to my customers in particular, like during my workday, they're going to get number one priority, but not all at once. So where it's just me, I try to tell people, hey, look, like if you call or you have an issue, we'll set something up, but I'm giving a vehicle right now 100% of my attention because that's what they deserve. And like your vehicle is going to get that same 100% when it's here on my lift. So we can set up a time to talk. I can, address your concern, schedule you to come in, but it's, during the day, I try not to be like on my phone too much communicating or someone, a lot of people have my cell phone, they text me, hey, I'm having this problem or whatever. I try to time block when, if I'm working on a customer's vehicle, I want 100% of my attention there. I take a break for lunch, I'll get back to people, answer phone calls, try to eat, maybe I'll research a job I'm working on and just try to, whatever I'm doing, I want to be 100% focused on that thing because it's the same thing when you're home with family, if you have kids or a wife or a girlfriend, it's like, you don't want to be sitting on the couch with your wife at the end of the day texting a customer, right? Just like... Do
you have limits? So do you like stop at a certain point in the day? Like, do you have a cutoff? How does that work for you?
I never stop, honestly. Like, with customers, as far as like communication, most people are pretty good about keeping it to business hours, but I'll, get home from work, I'll get on my phone, I'll be researching something or looking up maybe like a new program or a tool I want to purchase, and I'm like getting undressed on my way to the shower, still like looking up, whatever. I get out, I'm right back on, and then I try to, like I said, if I'm home and with family, it's like shut it down and be focused on that. You want to be 100% present, but there's only so many hours in the day, and that's why we're working on a lot of the things you and I are working on is to try to leverage, I don't mean this to in any sort of bad way, but like leverage other people's labor or time where you can have someone come in, set them up with some of the things that you're doing, your daily tasks. And, same thing with the systems as we talked about before. Once you see the process for creating a system, you start to see it everywhere in your life. And it's like all these things that I do, is this the most efficient way to do this? Like, why do I do this way? It doesn't actually make sense if you have to sit down and write it out, you'd say that this is nonsensical the way I'm doing this. So then you start to change other parts of your life to try to be more efficient and, ideally you spend the most amount of time doing the things you enjoy.
That's very insightful, Tim. Thank you. So what do you just never answer your fucking phone?
Well, I'm just trying to get the visual of Tim in his shower on his phone out of my head right now. Like Tim holding the phone outside the shower as the shampoo is running down his face like that. You don't do that.
Unless I have a really important job, it's like...
No, you know me. When I get home, I'll check my phone before I go to bed. But when I get home, from the time that I get home from work to the time that I go to bed, I'll screw around on the phone a little bit, look at the news. But I like to be unreachable, and it drives my wife crazy too. And she's like, well, what if it's an emergency? And I always say to her, if it's an emergency, call 911. You don't want to call me. Like if it's a broken my arm, okay, call 911. Like you don't need me right now. But James, admittedly, I'm not good at having my phone on my person all the time. During my show, I always turn it off. I put it on Do Not Disturb.
You're in a dungeon down there anyway. Rock 102 in that basement, you can't get service down there if you needed to.
Which is one of the benefits. But the problem with putting the Do Not Disturb on is you forget that it's on. So I'll put my phone in my bag, I'll go home, and this is great, no one's bothering me. Then I'll look at my phone, like, fuck, I got 15 texts. One of them's James, mad that I didn't bring the headset with the microphone. I'll show it to you. Where's my phone's around here somewhere. Get that! I feel bad. How many times have I apologized? Now, I've got to get better at it because it's the world we live in, right? You can't, getting back to the flip phone, I love those times because the phone's closed, no one bothers you.
Two most important things in business, man, are cash flow, having cash on hand, right? Using other people's money and time, right? Those are like two things that you absolutely need all the time. It's good to be selfish with your time, and it's good to be selfish with your access. People should be able to make appointments very easily. They should be able to get in touch with the company very easily during business hours. Like, hey, that's it. But they don't always need to be able to reach you personally. Like my phone is set. I had some smart fucking kid set my phone up so that I have multiple numbers on my phone. And then the other thing is that my phone, all of my numbers sync with my calendar. And so when it knows that I have like certain meetings, it automatically shuts off certain numbers. And so the only people that can always reach me are like Nicole and the girls. And like direct family.
What about me?
No, you're.
Am I in there? No, now you're lying.
Yeah, no, you're in there too, Pat. Yeah, you're in there too.
Right. I saw you didn't see the wink.
Yeah. No, it's just in case something goes wrong, they can reach me obviously all the time. But then even after a certain point in time, then certain numbers shut down, and I'll see it the next morning. I know that like there is rarely an instance that I need to be on the phone or be accessible at certain times of day. And then like 7:30, everything shuts down, right? 7:30, my phone goes into that downtime mode. I don't see anything, I don't know anything, and I'm in bed by like 8:15 every day,
Well, I know I said I never stop, but that's not necessarily just like the communication piece of it. And, you're talking about being like protective of your time. It's like, like tonight's me and my girl's date night. It's like when I get home, phone goes off and you're focused 100% on that. And a lot of times when I'm on my phone or doing stuff, it'll be like researching something, either like I said, a tool I want to purchase or something like that. But when like you said, not everyone has to have access to your time all the time. You have to be protective of that, and you've got to figure out what are the most important things in your life, and you have to give those things 100% of your attention when they need it.
That's a good point. And if you're going to be that guy who says how high every time someone says jump, it devalues you. It devalues your time if you're always available.
You shouldn't always be accessible.
No.
You shouldn't always be accessible. You have to schedule time for all these things. You talk to these business owners and they're like, well, I can't go to the gym anymore. I don't have time for that. And I don't have time for my family. And I don't have time. You prioritize the things that are important. You make time for them, because what in the fuck are we doing this for? Right? Like, what is your why? And then make time for that. The business will be there, right? And sometimes how many times have you worked on a project or an engine or a promotion or something like that, and you're like, you know what? Dude, I got to step away from this for a minute. And then you come back and you're able to like blast right through it, figure it out. Perfect example of that with me one time was years ago when I was still in the shop. We were on Union Street in Springfield at the time. And I had a Mercedes engine. I had to replace this balance shaft and all this stuff. So it's a pretty internal job. The engine's out of the car. I got everything apart. So one of the things that I do with timing chains is if I'm going to reuse them, or even if I'm not, I mark the old ones. I not only mark where they are in relation to, say, the camshaft and the crank and all of that stuff. I mark them with like a little paint marker. I mark the direction of them. Some people say, well, just use the tool. I don't care. Do it your way. I'm going to just continue to do it my way. I do it with belts, I do it with chains, all that stuff. So as I take them off, I'll mark every single thing. And, if you have multiple chains, I'll mark them with different color paint markers, And so I mark all of these things the exact same way I've always done it. And I was having like a frustrating day, like some employee problems, customer issue, vendor, like all the issues. I wasn't in the right headspace, and I'm kind of working through this job, and I couldn't get the chains back on. My marks, which are very basic, would not line up. Didn't matter what I did, and I ended up, as the more I was struggling with it, the more frustrated I got, and the harder it was. Like that, I couldn't line up anything, and I was like, you know what? It's been like 2 hours of trying to screw around with this thing. I'm done. I gotta go. And so I leave. I went home. Came back the next morning, and those chains put themselves on the next morning. They just put themselves on the next morning. It was no big deal. They lined right up. I don't know what the issue was to this day. I can't tell you. I don't know. It was all right there. But it's definitely a good example for me of like, sometimes you just got to step away. Like, you don't have to do it all today. The best thing that you can get sometimes is some rest, some clarity, be present, and hang out with your why, right? Your why is your family in most cases,
Right. Tim Lanza from Lanza Auto, Leominster, Mass. Thanks for joining us today, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We wish you good luck, and you will be back on the Boys of the Hood podcast. I can't wait to see how things progress, because James speaks highly of you. I just met you for the first time today. Looking forward to see what it turns into, and it looks like it's already turned into a beast. Very well done.
Thank you very much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Tim will do very, very well. We're going over now to Chicopee Comp to go see Greg Burton over there.
Thank you for taking us along for Boys Under the Hood.